Hey, everybody, welcome. We're excited to have you today. We're going to be digging into a very timely topic, which is Amazon Marketing Cloud. I'm going to give everybody a minute before we get started as we have people filing in here. This is going to be a pretty in-depth webinar today, and we're going to really get into the meat and potatoes of how you should be using AMC, and you can expect to walk away with strategies or tips, whatever you want to call it, to take back and use to implement in your business, whether you're managing media in-house or you're working with an agency. Um, this will allow you to have a better grasp on how you should be leveraging AMC to grow your business, optimize your ads. So yeah, we're excited for this one. Give it about 10 to 20 seconds here, and then we'll start with intros and dive right in. So, I guess, Harriet, do you want to introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Harriet Carson. Thank you guys for being here. I am the VP of Advertising at Nectar. Today we're going to walk you through what we found actually moves the needle in AMC. So, as Jason said, AMC is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for years now. Amazon's always expanding it and refining their product and also making it much more accessible and user friendly, which is great. But I think it can still be a bit overwhelming, no matter if you're a small business or even a large business or an agency. I'm constantly figuring out ways that AMC can solve new problems. And if you're here, you're probably someone on the spectrum of I've heard a lot about this and I'm trying to figure out where to start, or I'm already using it, but today I'm not really sure if I'm getting everything I should out of it. Both of those are completely fair places to be, and this session's for you. So I hope you get a lot out of it, and we're going to get specific and practical, what to run, how to read it, and what to actually do with it.
Yeah, and I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Jason Landro. I'm one of the founders and co-CEO of Nectar. We're a digital marketing agency. So part of what we do is run ads for brands, including Amazon ads, and we are an advanced partner with Amazon ads. So we use AMC a lot. But this will not be a sales pitch for Nectar. Rather, we will be actually diving deep on AMC. So without further ado, we're just going to dive in and looking, we're kind of framing this on what are actual use cases that you should be implementing or evaluating whether you should implement in your business. So looking at it in the lens of 10 actual things that you can take away from this webinar. So I think to take a step back, it'll be good to frame this combo with what is Amazon Marketing Cloud. So Harriet, do you want to kind of take the more general description?
Yeah, so Amazon Marketing Cloud, it is essentially a clean room of data. So we use it there's two ways to really use it. It's building audiences and then getting measurable data from Amazon, bridging the gap between, DSP, AMC, sponsored search, vendor central, seller central. And you're really able to get all these advanced analytics as well as customer behavior signals. And once you have that data, you can do a lot with it in terms of optimizing your ads or even optimizing your content or product detail pages or brand store. And you use these insights to get these measurable actions that are actually going to drive a true impact. A lot of that is building audiences through AMC and then implementing those audiences in various ways, which we'll go through throughout the webinar.
Yeah, and for those of you who might not know, what a clean room is, essentially Amazon is anonymizing customer data in the way that you can still manipulate it to extract insights. So you can't identify individual customers, but you can identify cohorts of customers. So, for example, looking at customers who added to cart and then doing analytics or adjusting your strategy based on add to carts or past purchasers, et cetera. So that's what the clean room allows you to do, or say privacy safe. That's what it means. So moving ahead, what are some of the kind of, I guess you talked about the two ways to use it, but what can you kind of expect to get out of AMC when using it with respect to the different properties on Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, you're able to essentially get there's a lot of ways that you can use it. I think it'd be difficult to cover everything that AMC can do in one session, but um, in terms of what you should get out of it is you get a lot of customer behavior signals that that you wouldn't get regardless, right? So you're able to understand your new to brand customers and how top of funnel is having an impact on downstream conversions and your bottom funnel metrics. You can literally see through like just the path to purchase report if someone sees your ad on, Prime Video and then they go to weather.com and see an online video ad and then they go to a competitor's product detail page and see a display ad and then they search for, your branded term. You can see that entire path. So you're really able to understand how your ads interact with each other. And then you're able to use that data to really drive actions within your ads by implementing, again, audiences is one piece of it, but there's also other optimizations that you can leverage from the data that AMC gives you.
Okay. Um, so kind of moving forward, could you talk about the workflow of how you would use AMC kind of more functionally?
Yeah, so this slide is more around AMC audiences. So essentially, AMC audiences are still pretty new, but there's a full suite of templated audiences, and then you can also create custom queries with custom audiences if you have advanced analytics skills or you're working with a partner who has SQL knowledge and can build those for you. But within custom audience creations, there are two ways to use it. The first is you can actually target those audiences. Targeting audiences with AMC would be used on sponsored display and Amazon DSP. So you can create an audience, for example, of new to brand customers over a specific time period. So if you want to target users who over the past 5 years have never been exposed to your brand, have never even clicked a product detail page, not going a little bit beyond just new to brand, but has never even interacted with your brand, you can leverage those audiences and target those with sponsored display and Amazon DSP. You can also overlay audiences. So if you wanted to do, a new to brand customer that's never been exposed to your brand and also is in market for your product or is, a high value customer and a top spender within your category, you can do that. The other way to do that, to use it, is within sponsored products and sponsored brands, as well as sponsored brand video, you can create audience bid adjustments. So this is similar to top of search and product detail page bid adjustments, where you're willing to accelerate your base bid to reach a certain placement. This is the same exact concept, except you're accelerating your bid to reach a specific audience. So let's use that new to brand audience, for example. Let's say you're a CPG brand and you really are willing to pay more to acquire customers. What you would do then is you would create specific Amazon Marketing Cloud campaigns within the advertising console for sponsored products and sponsored brands, where you might want to adopt a low bid strategy for anyone that has bought from your brand in the past year, right? So you could set a low bid strategy to like 50 cents, but then you could do a bid multiplier for new to brand customers where you're willing to pay up to, let's say, $3 for those customers. So instead of bidding up for a placement, you're just bidding up to reach a specific customer. I will say the key difference is that within sponsored brands and sponsored products, if you're leveraging audiences, that user has to take an action, right? They have to search a relevant term. Within sponsored display and Amazon DSP, it's forced content consumption, right? Where the ad's being put in front of the user no matter what they're researching or no matter what they're browsing.
Yeah, we talk a lot about incrementality of your ads, right? So the classic example is how much should you spend on search? And as an aside, I see there's some comments about a bad connection. Harriet's coming through fine on my end. I don't seem to be lagging, but if anyone can put in here if you're having a bad connection, whether it's Harriet or me, we'd appreciate it. We'll try to switch internet if that's the case. But Harriet is coming through fine for me. But yeah, let us know. But we talk a lot about incrementality. The classic example would be branded search and how much to invest. But here, these are clearly great ways to accelerate getting in front of new to brand customers that are in aisle or have bought from competitors and haven't bought from you that you know are net new. There are some brands that where you're ubiquitous in retail, and and so it may be harder to measure new to brand because consumers might have bought you in a brick and mortar retail store, so it's not as maybe true. That being said, that's a challenge no matter what. So I wouldn't get too caught up in that. And the reality is, to the extent you have consumable products, going after those customers on Amazon and getting them on Subscribe and Save is even stronger than having them seek you out in the retail store. So, leveraging these audiences, overlaying them, will ensure that you're getting incremental revenue. All right, so lots of buffering. I don't know that we can do anything about that. This is being saved locally, so we will be able to send out a replay after as well. But it's not buffering on my end, or is it buffering on your end?
Nope.
No? Huh. Okay, it should resolve itself. But if it doesn't, let us know. So step one is using AMC to diagnose your ad strategy. How would you approach this?
Yeah. So the thing about AMC is that, reporting is only half of it. The real value is, what you do after you run them. The loop on this side is how I think about AMC in practice is, you need to diagnose what's happening. So build a, 1 second.
Oh, must have a delivery. Sorry.
Yep. Sorry about that. So you need to diagnose what's happening, build custom audiences based off of what you find, activate that through your ads and DSP, and then measure what changed, and then repeat, rinse and repeat. Really every week, not every quarter. And I'm not saying that every week you should be running a path to purchase report or an overlap report. There is, too much reporting that you can run where there's an attribution period. But there are signals that you can get every week that are going to let you make small tweaks and optimizations to your ads to refine them and to increase your LTV. So say you run a cohort analysis and find that customers who bought in your first 30 days have 3 times higher LTV than a customer who came in through a promo. That's a diagnosis, right? The next step isn't really to write a report about it. It's to build an audience that looks like those high LTV customers and go find more of them. That's the loop closing. AMC is what connects these insights in the action. That's what makes it different from just another reporting tool. And you can also do lookalike audiences based off of your core audiences too.
So what are 6 reports that you recommend brands use?
Yeah, so these reports, these 6 ones are the ones I come back to most often because each one answers questions that's genuinely hard to answer any other way. So new to brand, which campaigns and search terms, are bringing in genuinely new customers versus converting people who already knew you. The new to brand rate and acquisition cost per customer or cost per campaign can look completely different from your overall return on ad spend. A campaign that looks average on ROAS might be your best new to brand driver. You'd never know without this. And on the flip side, your campaign with the highest ROAS might just be users that may have bought anyways, or, are coming through unbranded and aren't new. Then there's gateway product, which product is your front door? So where do new customers start before they buy anything else from you? This changes kind of where you put your ad dollars. So an example is, I worked with a brand that was convinced that their hero product, which was their highest price SKU, was the entry point. It was a, $24 accessory. Once we knew that, the whole media strategy shifted because we found that a product that was $14 was actually bringing in the more new to brand customers. And that accessory really was the start of the customer journey, and it was worth a lot more. So it was encouraging, upsell and cross-product promotion. Customer basket, what do customers buy together and in what order? So this is the foundation of any, cross-seller bundle strategy. You'll often find lower price product is the strongest predictor of a much bigger second purchase. Path to purchase, if you're using AMC, this is probably one of the first reports that you heard of. It's it's talked about so much because it's impactful. The actual customer journey across your campaign types is important, not what if something isn't what you hoped would have happened, you can pivot based off of this report. Most brands are surprised by how simple and direct the path turns out to be. But small tweaks to, the audiences that you're targeting and the campaign types that you're using can really impact the customer journey. Then LTV by cohorts, which customers are worth the most over time. This is how you know whether the customers you're acquiring are the right ones. And then subscribe and save. Subscribe and save performance is a huge unlock this year through the paid subscriptions, which we'll get into. But it's one of the highest value things a customer can do, and the most brands have almost no visibility into what drives enrollment or what causes churn. AMC subscribe and save metrics completely fixes that.
So two things. One, we think that the buffering issue is a local issue for individual users. I'd recommend that you exit and come back in. If you are having that issue, it should resolve it, hopefully. And then please make sure to put your questions in the chat. We'll make sure to answer them either in line as if they're relevant to the slides or at the end. So great question from Peter. Well, a couple questions, but I'll take the subscribe and save one since it's relevant to this. How do you prove your customers are not churning and how long these customers are using subscribe and save, and how do you count cancellation? So this is something that was available for brands on Seller Central, and is now available for vendors through AMC. So you can essentially get that same data. So you can get the lifetime value essentially by ASIN and filter it. So we've built dashboards inside of our analytics platform, iDerive, using AMC, where you can look at the monthly waterfall and see where the drop-offs are and then the revenue by month, so that you can, and again, filter that by ASIN or roll that up to see as a brand how you're performing with subscribe and save. But then that allows you to then identify drop-offs and potentially devise strategies to work on the drop-offs. Or if it's a product issue, right, you might need to make some adjustments somehow. Harriet, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just say, Peter, we have some specific slides and outputs on how we use subscribe and save data from AMC. So we'll get to that later in the deck. And it shows you how you really, I guess, validate if customers are returning or if they're staying around, because we can see the drop off.
That being said, it requires some custom development. There's no Amazon doesn't provide an out of the box solution for you to not obtain the data. Well, yeah, they don't provide an out of the box solution to analyze that data. You have to manipulate it, doing custom development work or use a software like ours. I'm sure we're not the only one that provides the dashboards you would need. So kind of moving in a little more here, how can you use AMC to evaluate your marketing mix?
Yeah, so I do want to call out this screenshot specifically is not from AMC. Amazon does give you the top 5 purchase path in sponsored ads now. However, you can get the full customer purchase path if you actually run the query. The path to purchase analysis, what it actually looks like is this, but much more expanded. What you'll see here is the top 5 conversion paths for a real brand, ranked by revenue. Path 1, sponsored product, single touch, straight to purchase, 3.75 million in sales, 74% new to brand purchases. It's performing well, but it's not close. Path 2, display plus sponsored brands, 481,000. Path 3, online video, 205,000. The multi-touch paths, they're real, but they're a small fraction of the volume. So this pattern, we see it come up constantly. Brands assume their funnel is, complex. They've invested in awareness. They've built out upper funnel. And then the data shows that most customers just found them in search, clicked a sponsored product ad, and bought. That's not a failure of the funnel. That's just, sometimes how customers behave. The implication for budget is real, though. Sponsored product spend and, hold upper funnel formats. Sponsored products holds upper funnel formats to their own performance standard rather than crediting them for conversions that sponsored products drove. However, you need to layer in at different attribution models to really understand the customer journey, and not just default to like class click, because Amazon could be discrediting sponsored products because that's the last thing they clicked. You want to look at multi-touch attribution, linear attribution to really understand how customers are moving. And that's where AMC comes in. In this report right here, you're not going to see all those different attribution models because it's directly in the console. With AMC, you can. But essentially what you want to see when you're looking at multi-touch attribution is that your DSP upper funnel campaigns are driving downstream conversion. And this is the report that you use to identify how users are actually finding you.
Yeah, so we've gotten some updates in the chat here that it's our luck that Crowdcast, the platform we're using to do this webinar, is having technical issues, which is why some of you are experiencing buffering. It's my understanding that these recordings, like each one of us individually, is saved locally, so it essentially acts as a backup irrespective of what you see on your end. So we will be sending this out after. If you're getting buffering issues and it's obviously impossible to watch, I'd recommend trying to come back in and see if it works for you, and if not, we will send it out. I understand it's miserable to watch a webinar when it's like dial-up internet, so we will do our best to get this out expediently. It does take some time to process. Yeah, so one question I get a lot about this on the marketing mix is like, is about frequency, and it's like, hey, if we're going to show our ads more to people anyway, like, isn't that automatically going to increase the purchase rate? How would you? And sorry, so like adding DSP in the mix typically increases the amount of times they see an ad. What would your response be to that, Harriet?
That frequency increases purchase rate?
Yeah, so like, when you look at these path to purchase reports, what you often see is that when DSP is in the mix, there's a higher purchase rate, and so a response I get to that is kind of like, of course, duh, because they're seeing the in totality, they're seeing more ads with the DSP mixed in. Like, is this actually a true indicator of performance, right?
I mean, you can break it down to, you can break this purchase path down to the audience level. So you can actually understand, like, I think that this is a broader view. Like, when I'm looking at this, it doesn't break down your upper funnel versus your retargeting campaigns, and they cannot be looked at the same. Yes, some users may have already been exposed to your brand. Some users have had more frequency than others. And, there's frequency reports that you can pull to really analyze how frequency is impacting conversions. But, to go a step deeper, what I like to do is I like to look at by audience, and like not even just by upper funnel versus like mid and lower. It's by audience. How are they finding you, and are they converting, and when are they dropping off in the purchase journey, to really refine that. I think that there's a way to understand, incrementality, but frequency doesn't necessarily mean that people are always going to buy anyways, right? They need to be the right audience. And that's where I think that frequency and purchases don't directly correlate. They have to have some sort of interest or intent to buy from your brand.
I also think this is where advertising acumen comes in, right? It can be really easy to run DSP retargeting and put it on checkout pages of your own branded products. So that would obviously, skew the reporting here, because you would see a much higher purchase rate because the customers are already checking out in this example. So it's important to really understand the full potential of possibilities and how that relates to your mix, right? You don't want to just look at this one report and say, oh, this is working, right? As Harriet kind of just pointed out there, you need to drill deeper. So one thing that comes up a lot when we talk to brands is they aren't really aware of the different types of subscriptions that are available. Can you kind of dive into what's useful and practical? I know there's some very expensive paid subscriptions.
Yeah. So Amazon Insights and Amazon Retail Purchases, they were released last year, where they're paid subscriptions. They are pretty affordable. Combined, I want to say it depends on the amount of data, but I've never seen it above $700. It's normally in the $500 range for both of these per month. But the data that they unlock is extremely powerful, especially for vendor brands, because it's giving you a leg up, and it's kind of evening the playing field on the data that you get from 3P and 1P. So what these reports do is, honestly, they kind of work together. You kind of need one to have the other, because one allows you to go back 5 years, one allows you to have more, new to brand data, and the other allows you to go into product level data. So with the combination of them, you're getting pretty advanced data sets. So it unlocks organic data. So with these paid subscriptions, now you're not just looking and limited to advertising customer data. You actually get to unlock organic insights, which is huge, because ads is just one piece of it, and ads exist to drive organic growth. So you really want to be able to analyze both. You can go back 5 years, which, typically if you're analyzing new to brand, Amazon defaults to 365 days. You don't have to do that anymore. You can look at new to brand with a much longer lens and look back period. And then you can build audiences off of your organic purchases or customer data sets now, and you weren't able to do that before. So, one example for this would be, if you want to look back, if you're a product that is very expensive and, people typically aren't buying within a year, when you have that 365-day look back window, it's like, all right, well, everyone's a new to brand customer, right? But say everyone's buying, 3 to 4 years, then you can really start identifying those new to brand customer patterns and start understanding, the LTV around those two. You can also, look throughout the past 5 years at, upsell opportunities, or are people buying, one product and then, they're 2 years later coming back and buying another. Like, we have all that data, which will help you inform your strategy and targeting as well.
And same for the subscribe and save data. So this is, again, where you would get that data and be able to unlock it to inform your strategies where it previously wasn't available to vendors at all.
Yep.
Okay, so kind of diving deeper here on what this unlocks for vendors. Harry, can you kind of walk through that?
Yeah, so I went through a lot of this on the last slide, but really for vendor brands, Amazon 3P, because you have some of that customer data, you're able to kind of identify who's a new to brand customer, when are they repeat purchasing, what products are they buying, and then you can develop cohorts around your customer behavior and repeat purchase rates, LTV, and you can develop strategies around that. For vendor brands, haven't really been able to do that until now. So you can do that exact thing within AMC if you're unlocking the organic data set. Then you're able to see new to brand customer by week or by month, by product, and then their repeat purchase behavior over time, which will help you develop your advertising strategies. It also allows you to understand if you're activating these, let's say, new to brand AMC audiences within DSP or within your sponsored ads, then you can you can check back after that has been implementing, and you can track, is my new to brand percentage going up? Am I getting more new to brand customers within these strategies? And that goes for organic too, because again, ads propel your organic growth. And ideally, if you're higher in the organic rank, more new to brand customers are going to come in. And then beyond that, there's a balance between acquiring new to brand customers and then retaining them over time. So with the AMC audiences, I mean, you can target lapsed customers. You can understand when users are typically dropping off. So again, say you're a CPG brand and you notice trends around, all right, new to brand customers come in they're repurchasing every month, and then after about 3 to 4 months, they drop off. That's when you should be hitting them with retargeting to try and re-engage them.
Yeah, and so a couple of things there. You talked about, are your new to brand campaigns actually driving new to brand growth? And then now you can also measure, are those customers staying? So you can look at that at the campaign level. You can look at that at the ASIN level from a sales perspective and seeing when they drop off. It also might be that the issue isn't necessarily advertising. It could be, a product issue or a messaging issue where you're like, if you're selling a supplement and you're not telling them like what to expect in terms of results over 30, 60, 90, for example. So it can be really helpful to diagnose operational or sales issues, marketing, in addition to paid media. And then taking Peter's last question, these are great, Peter. Thanks. Keep them coming. The 3P data you're referencing is from the Search Query Performance Report. We actually did a webinar on this. Was that last time or the time before? So there's a workaround to get this for vendors, although Amazon is releasing it in beta and Vendor Central. So I expect it'll be rolled out fully because it's already available to every seller brand. If you message me, I'll tell you what it is. I don't know that it's even gray hat. Amazon just only makes it available to sellers, so the workaround is to get it that way. But yeah, it's really, really powerful data to understand your market share at a search term level, essentially, and to devise strategies to grow your market share at the search term level, as well as measure the efficacy of your spend as it relates to your branded search share at a keyword and ASIN level. But yeah, that's a great question. We're really power users of search query performance data. And then the other thing I'll say about this is if you're a vendor and you're not utilizing this data from AMC currently and you sell anything that, you have any meaningful scale on consumables, you're doing yourself a massive disservice, and your ads are not as incremental as they could be unless you're just like the 0.1% lucky, just happens to have the exact right ad strategy. Because there's just so much here that you can use to optimize. What we see every time when we work with vendors and unlock this is that there's meaningful adjustments to make an ad strategy to optimize it better, to get more new to brand customers, one, and two, have higher customer LTV.
Yeah, I think before this, vendor brands really now they can understand repeat purchase behavior and LTV, see where customers drop off in the journey, calculate the true ROI by customer segment, and build product strategy off real customer behavior. Instead, I think prior you kind of had to use sales rank and honestly some assumptions by looking at your organic rank. And now this data is available. One thing we didn't mention is that there is a 60-day free trial, so it's a beta where if you have not activated it, I don't see that going away, or I haven't heard it's going away. I would wait a little bit until you activate it, until you have true use cases that you want to use it for. Like develop a plan, because you don't want that 60 days will go by fast. You want to make sure that once you activate it, you're running queries, and then at the end, and then you're making the adjustments that are going to ideally, impact that outcome, whether it's, new to brand customers. I want more new to brand customers. Build audiences for new to brand. Then after 60 days, track what changes have actually been made. Track the change in purchase behavior at the end of that 60-day trial. And then, think to yourself or analyze, is this worth paying $500 a month? It probably will be.
And so here's an example of how you could track that. Do you want to walk through this?
Yeah. So, Peter, this is similar. This is what you were talking about with customer churn. So what you're looking at here is, this is true data. I changed the numbers a bit just to protect our brands, but this is from the Retail Insights activation in AMC. It's a custom query, so it's not templated. You can't, go into Amazon. You'd have to build it. But this, I topped it off at 13. This is by month. It goes all the way to 5 years, but you can see, oh, sorry, that was the bottom one. You can see after everyone that's enrolled in your subscribe and save for the past 5 years, how many purchases do they drop off? So you can see after one purchase, there is 806 users in that data set. 22% of those customers dropped off after their first purchase, with only 626 going forward to a second purchase. Then, after their second purchase, 29% additional customers dropped off before their third purchase. I see this a lot when brands do like really heavy discounts on their first order for subscribe and save. There are, tactics to re-engage these customers, because you can create lists off of these, right? So one list that I frequently implement for my CPG brands are, if I'm looking at the past 13 months, who received a product from subscribe and save 4 to 13 months ago, but hasn't received it in the past 3 months. Let's target those users and try and re-engage them. The bottom chart here, it'll show you just the amount of customers that purchased recently versus prior years. So you can really start to get a sense of brand loyalty. Are the people staying around? Are they dropping off? And then, how are my, this is kind of a high level view, but how are my campaigns and activations, or even how are my like brand tailored promotions or my coupon strategy? It doesn't just have to be ads. How is that impacting customer behavior? And, are my tactics working in re-engaging these customers? And, are they purchasing again?
And then this goes to the new to brand retention rates, which is kind of a different uh, visualization.
Yeah, this is the cohort retention table I was talking about. It's one of my favorite things to walk brands through because it tells a story about their business and how often where they often haven't seen this clearly before. Again, we used to just have this for 3 pre-brands. Now we have it for 1P with the AMC unlock. But each row is a month of acquisition. Each column shows what percentage of those customers, and each number is how many new to brand customers are coming in each month. And then each column shows what percentage of those customers came back in months 1 through 13. So you can really read across any row to see, of everyone acquired in January of 2024, how many repurchased in month 1, month 2, and so on. A few things stand out. In this chart, retention is strongest in month 1 through month 3, typically 3 to 6% per month, drops off to 2 to 3% by month 9. That's a short window. The first 60 days are where you have the most influence over whether a customer becomes a repeat buyer. The second thing, mid 2024 cohorts are consistently outperforming early 2025 on early retention. Something changed, acquisition quality, category competition, maybe creative pricing, something, and figuring out why those cohorts were stronger is more valuable than almost, any campaign level optimization that you can do, because you can react to it. The first reaction when I show this to brands is usually, we need to do more life cycle marketing. Yes. But the more interesting question is, what was different about the customers from different time periods? That answer should reshape, your acquisition strategy going forward, not just, your ad strategy. Action here would be, life cycle marketing focused on the first 30 days, implementing retargeting there, and then replenishment reminders, cross-sell, win back, and, for customers past 6 months, a dedicated reactivation campaign.
Yeah, and so this is a table from our analytics platform, iDrive. Again, this data is available through AMC, but you have to manipulate it to get these outputs. Again, in the interest of transparency, we are not the only provider that offers these solutions, but you should be using this if you have a heavy and scaled consumable business. With our platform, you're able to filter this by ASIN, so you can get really granular and understand the performance by ASIN, or you can look at groups of ASINs. For example, like a parent ASIN, see how it performs, or maybe your strategy is to get someone to buy the cheap option first and then get them to come back and subscribe for a bigger, or higher quantity or count if you're selling supplements, for example. So you can analyze how those strategies are performing by slicing and layering the data. So how would you use the customer journey and product path report?
Yeah. So now let's look at what happens after the first purchase happens, right? So this does go back 5 years. The product path report shows which products customers buy first, which they buy second, and how long it takes. You can see the amount of customers that come in, as well as the amount of occurrences. This is a custom query. Again, it's not templated. 2 things I always look at here. First, more customers are on 2-step journeys. So they start with a lower priced entry point, and the second purchase is often, the higher value item, which means that entry point is doing more work than its revenue number suggests. So a good example of this is, any drink brand on Amazon, right? If you have a variety pack, that's probably your top seller. It's probably driving the most new to brand. If that variety pack ever goes out of stock, you're going to see massive decreases in your total sales and your new to brand, because that's what's really driving, it's your entry product. It's what's driving new to brand growth. People want to try different flavors. Then they might convert into one of those flavors in a larger pack size later. So this really allows you to see that path. Second, the repurchase timing column, you can see it varies a lot. Some paths have customers coming back in 7 days, others in 174 days. That timing is your retargeting window. If you're running one retargeting window for all of your customers, you're almost certainly messaging some of them too early and missing others entirely. So you have to test different look back windows. A supplement brand I worked with was retargeting everyone at 14 days. This report showed, their main product had a 30-day average repurchase cycle, and a secondary line was closer to like 90, 100. We split the retargeting into separate windows by product line, and the conversion rate of those campaigns went up meaningfully. You can also see here what products are people buying together, right? So like thinking about supplements, big catalog, but users who are buying supplements, they're not typically as brand loyal, they're supplement loyal, but you can see what other types of supplements they're buying and really do cross product promotion or, bundling opportunities as well. So again, beyond ads, AMC, there's use cases really in every aspect of your business.
Um, so we, in the interest of time, how can you kind of use these? We talked about, well, how can you use these to really improve your advertising performance?
Yeah, I think quick framework before we move into activation, everything AMC measures falls into two buckets. So journey and influence, how customers move through your funnel, path mapping, time to conversion, custom audience creation, and just really understanding who your customer is and how they got to you. Then there's incrementality and intent, right? So whether your advertising is causing behavior or just appearing alongside it. New to brand metrics, brand search lift from mid-funnel spending, multi-touch attribution. Most brands I talk to are comfortable with the first bucket. The second one is where the gap usually is, and it's where most of the interesting work within AMC actually happens.
Okay, build and deploy. So, yeah, how can you actually use AMC audiences? We touched on this at the outset, but going deeper.
Yeah, AMC audiences can be activated. Again, I mentioned two ways through DSP, sponsored display for direct targeting, and through audience bid modifiers for sponsored products and sponsor brands. I'll get into bid modifiers, I believe, in the next slide, but there's three types of audiences that are kind of like the core buckets. There's existing customers, so people who have already bought from you. You can get really precise here. You can target lapsed customers, cart abandoners, customers in a specific repeat purchase window for a specific product line, customers who have visited your brand store but not purchased, or had multiple detail page views, or have been exposed to your DSP campaigns. Definitely recommend that one. If you're running DSP, you should be retargeting with bottom funnel. There's lookalike customers. So AMC builds lookalike audiences of your Amazon buyer base or your D2C customer list, people who behave like your best buyers but haven't purchased from you yet. And then there's new customers, true new to brand audiences using suppression logic that excludes anyone who purchased in the last 5 years. Cleaner new customer targeting than what standard Amazon audiences offer. These audience I see most underused is lapsed customers. Someone who bought 8 months ago and hasn't come back isn't lost. They just need a reason to return. A targeted DSP campaign specifically for that group with, creative that acknowledges they bought before, it's consistently one of the highest ROI campaigns you can execute. And then I did want to add for abandoned carts, there is a new data set within AMC where you can now target customers who have their competitors' items in their cart to try and steal market share or steal that sale away. So that's very new as of I would say in the past month, and we're in early testing, but it's performing well.
All right, so you alluded to it. How would you kind of use these audiences based on the stage of the funnel?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's different audiences for different stages. We talked about how we measure the funnel, but I think the biggest takeaway from this is if you're targeting users with upper funnel campaigns, you should absolutely be leveraging retargeting users who have been exposed to your upper funnel campaigns. You see in the path to purchase report that users who are exposed to upper funnel and then they, end up at sponsored products, their journey is much they're influenced more and their purchase rate is typically higher. So if you're retargeting those users that were exposed, it's driving them down the funnel in a meaningful way. And ideally, what you're going to see through AMC is that you're driving them all the way down to conversions. I would say, retargeting's at the bottom. I think we talked through a lot of this, but there's a lot that you can implement throughout the different funnel stages with various audiences that are available to you.
Yeah, and again, and I think I spoke about it earlier, is using the right audiences and layering can really lead to incremental sales and where you can take market share from competitors because you can make sure you're getting in front of relevant customers or shoppers when they're in aisle, as opposed to banking on getting them at the conversion stage. And I would say to the extent you sell more expensive products, that has an outsized importance because you know that the consideration windows are longer as opposed to impulse purchases in contrast, where people go on Amazon, they're looking for like sponges or cleaning supplies where they're probably going to transact right away. Whereas, thinking of purchasing a Mother's Day gift or a giftable item that's more, $100 plus, getting in front of them when they're in aisle, especially if you're running upper funnel advertising, is going to lead to better outcomes than just banking on, that they find you. So do you want to walk quickly through this kind of step-by-step guide on how to implement?
Yeah, we'll send you this, but this is just essentially showing you how to create an AMC audience. You can do this directly in the console now for sponsored products. If you want to deploy anything on Amazon DSP, you need to have that connection within your AMC account to your DSP. So you create the audience, then you can navigate to sponsored products directly in the console. And after you've created the audience, it will directly pull in. There's directions here just how to, there's a drop down and how to deploy that. And then you can add specific targets within sponsored display, as well as DSP to actually target those users. So very similar to a bid modifier for placements within sponsored ads.
Okay. All right. So, how can you use AMC to boost bids?
Yeah, this goes further than just boosting bids. You can have a cohesive strategy using AMC audiences with bid boosts on one end and then targeting on the other, because you can use it for bid boosts with sponsored products and sponsored brands and targeting with sponsored display and DSP. So you can target one audience on the DSP, and then you can follow it up by boosting your bids for that exact same audience on sponsored search. If you're targeting an audience, you want to make sure you're visible for that audience when they're showing up in search. It's also the opposite. You can do a bid boost for specific audiences on sponsored, products, and then you can remarket to those audiences that clicked on those ads within, sponsored display or DSP. And then you can, also have bid boosts and identify like what audiences are performing well, and then create lookalike audiences of those customers. You can also, you can do audiences of customers that have purchased X amount, doesn't matter how many dollars. So you can set it to like $500 over the past 5 months or over the past week if you want, where you're targeting users who are really actually buying on Amazon, not just browsing.
These are powerful tools to be able to be a lot more targeted with your ad dollars and get more out of them. So maybe you can kind of explain this example here on how you would leverage it.
Yeah, so we sort of went through this, but this is an example of how you leverage audience bid modifier. So in this specific example, it's the term glasses, right? Say you're a premium eyeglass product on Amazon, and you're going after the term glasses, but glasses is a very broad term. And if you're at a higher price point, I will say this is something that I absolutely recommend because you can burn budget very, very quickly if you're trying to get to the top of search for very expensive terms where you know that there's cheaper alternatives. Make sure that you're doing audience adjustments, because it's not about showing up at the top of search all the time. It's about showing up for the right audience, right? So for this example, the term glasses, setting a 50-cent bid, but then a 6x increase on the audience high intent premium or new to brand shoppers, so willing to pay $3 to reach those audiences. You're essentially making sure that your ads are in front of the right customer that might convert, and not just the broader audience. I think that premium brands have trouble reaching the right audiences on Amazon. And again, even in high volume categories, or especially in high volume categories, you can burn budget really fast. So this is a way to conserve your budget and just make sure that you're getting your products in front of the right users.
Yeah, it really solves a challenge for a lot of premium brands that want to compete on high volume keywords, but know that their price hasn't allowed them to historically. So it's a great workaround in that regard. Um, yeah, I know we're running tight on time here, so we'll run quickly through these last few slides.
Yeah, this is directly from brand analytics, just the customer journey. We look at this to understand abandoned cart rate by month, and then we implement abandoned cart retargeting to understand how this drop off is changing over time. And then
Okay.
these are just some custom audiences that we found successful. I mean, seasonality is huge. You can look back at like what was happening last season and who bought last season. Prime Day is huge. Like looking back at who engaged with your ads last Prime Day. I mean, you can go back 5 years, so you can really get very granular with the audiences that you're going after. These are a couple of just the use cases.
Okay, so how can you use AMC for high visibility events like Prime Day?
Yeah, with Prime Day coming up, this is a great time to talk about this. I actually have never heard any other agency or brand talk about this report, but within Amazon Marketing Cloud, there is a tentpole event phase overlap. So essentially, what it allows you to do is you can choose your lead in period, it's a custom date range. You can choose your lead out period, also a custom date range, and then you can choose your event period. So for Prime Day, we typically would set our lead in period 2 weeks before, then day of would be the 4 days of, and then lead out period would be 2 weeks after. And then you can understand how your marketing activations are acquiring customers. So for the lead in, you can see when were users exposed to your campaigns or your brand 2 weeks prior? Did they discover you the day of? Post event, I think, is the most under leveraged. There's so much increase in the category the day of, even if they don't buy. You should be using those targeting lists that are available to you of users who visited your product detail pages, or you can get down to users who read your reviews. I mean, it's very, very in depth, and retarget those customers. And then, you can save those lists for next time you run a deal. If they're not converting, next time you run a deal, target them. You know that they're deal shoppers on Prime Day. So you get all those lists, but, you can go a step further and really understand, how many touch points did it take for a customer to convert? When did they discover you? Were they last minute purchasers driven by the deal? Were they waiting to buy your product? This report, it really does allow you to understand how your lead in day of and post event strategy are working together to drive that conversion.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful report, and a great way to uh, improve performance. So what's new in AMC? Harriet, are you still? Oh, we lost you for a second.
Yeah, I'm getting some. I didn't hear any of that. Getting some
I
delay.
said, what's new in AMC?
Yeah, Amazon's pushing Gen AI a lot. So even with coming out with Rufus last year, and then also Amazon Prompt, you can come up with Amazon tailored query results. So Amazon is constantly updating what's available in their templates, right? So I remember years ago when I had to run SQL reports, it was time consuming, and it took like 30 minutes for a report to even load. Today, Amazon is really like frequently coming out with new templated audiences, new reporting templates. So I check every week because every week I normally see something new. So they're constantly refining and expanding their audience suite. Paid subscriptions is new, which we went over. I would, again, definitely recommend coming up with use cases and then activating that 60-day trial. And then, again, they're expanding their subscribe and save signals, which is definitely worth taking a look at if you're a CPG brand.
Okay, last but not least, 5 tests for
Yeah.
26.
Yeah, so I'll get through this quickly so we can have some questions. There's, multi-touch funnel sequencing. So understanding how many touch points drive conversion. I think another thing here is frequency reports and understanding what the frequency cap should be throughout your funnel, because you don't want to oversaturate users, but also you want to make sure there's enough touch points where you're top of mind. There's purchase cycle recency. So, again, with retargeting windows, you want to test different look back periods. We kind of showed you the data to analyze to understand where you should start with retargeting. And I think the question is where does retargeting stop adding value? And AMC really allows you to run those analyses. Creative testing. So AMC allows you to see how are different creatives performing across different audiences. There's so many different creative types. There's product videos, there's lifestyle, there's banner ads with all your products. There's UGC videos now, which perform really well. So, what format's performing the best and what's, gaining the most impressions. Conquesting, we talked through that a little bit, but how is that performing? And then are users switching from one brand from a competitor brand to you? And then, measure new household reach. That's huge, right? So what is your household reach prior to a campaign implementation? And what's the new household reach after? Some of these do require holdout groups. To truly test incrementality, you kind of need a holdout group. You can build those into the design before you launch. I also wouldn't recommend running all 5 at once because you want a clean test. So pick the one with the biggest unknown or the biggest answer that you want and, run with that.
Jam-packed a lot in here, and sorry any of you that had issues. We apologize on behalf of Crowdcast. A lot of great questions in only a couple minutes. Peter, thanks for dropping so many good questions. Some of them were more technical, like about timeouts. I think we'll save that, and maybe if you want to talk about that offline, we're happy to do that. I think one good one here is about geographic sales. So he said, are you seeing any success with geographic sales, so zip code targeting? What strategy do you recommend for US sales by postal code? I am seeing thresholds on this when going too granular, and AMC is extremely sensitive to it as it considers postal code near personally identifiable information. And I think that probably has to do with audience size threshold. So if you too granular, the audiences won't be big enough.
Yeah, I'll be honest here. Yeah, that does have to do with the audience size. For geo-targeting, I recommend it in very specific use cases, right? So say you're a company selling pool products and you're trying to develop an evergreen, like year-round strategy. In the winter, people on the East Coast, they're probably not searching or buying pool products. So we'd recommend targeting specific and say it's like, let's go a step further and say it's a very premium brand, more expensive than their competitors. We would recommend, in the winter months, targeting those warmer geographic areas. But yes, going into zip codes of users who typically have high income or zip codes of users who likely have pools in that neighborhood, right? That's when I would recommend it. In general, I for like a brand that is not that has the budget and doesn't have that like seasonal aspect. Typically, I recommend just more niche targeting because you don't want to limit where your ads are showing up. If someone is in market and meets your ICP, right, is your ideal customer, they have the attributes of that. You don't want to not reach those users just because they might live in a certain area or they might be in a certain area. So geo-targeting is we recommend it in certain use cases, but typically, I'll just go US and make sure that I'm refining the audiences and making sure that the audiences are narrow. I never want to go too broad because, that's wasting budget.
Yeah, and I guess the way to explain that differently is your time will be better spent analyzing and manipulating the audiences in most cases and the bids as opposed to the where you're targeting people in terms of their location. Like you'll get better outcomes from that unless you have a highly seasonal business and like it's a warm weather product and you want to exclude, cold weather zip codes in the winter, for example. But yeah, I think that's how I'd reframe or come at that answer from a different perspective.
Yeah, because usually there's a reason that people would be in market. You don't want to miss out on a potential customer. Um, so you don't want to limit yourself just by zip codes unless, it's a very specific use case.
So that is all the time we have. We will be sending this out once it downloads, and hopefully next time we won't have technical issues. But we appreciate you, joining us today and going through this. We hope that we found this useful. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have more questions. You can reach out to us on our website or either Harriet or me on LinkedIn. Would be the best ways to get in contact with us. Thanks again, and have a great week.
Thanks, guys.